Good evening and welcome to the Poetry of Justice Show with Jackie Ray Phillips here on YikesRadio.com. Now you know, here on the Poetry of Justice Show, this is where social consciousness meets the arts. And what we do is we select topics that spark the interest and awareness of social diversity, ranging from arts, entertainment, and social justice at large, leaving our listeners thinking and saying,
Yikes.
Yikes! YikesRadio.com. Now guys, those are the sultry sounds of my mentor, the Mr. Kevin Nash, who is the owner of this establishment, Accelerated Radio. But you know, I'm on Yikes. I am your gal, the queen of Yikes Radio, Poetry of Justice Show, Jackie Ray Phillips, the first show to air on that line. So I take a little bit of pride in that. And then I also like to give respect to our sponsorship, and that is Miss Lori Ray Fisher of Gingy Productions and Entertainment Company. Actually, she's in the house tonight. Hello,
Hey,
Lori G. And then I also am going to give love and respect to other sponsorship, which is WMPJ Steelworks and APS Muscle Cars. Dante, we've got a lot of people chiming in tonight, so go ahead and hit wave and hello. And I see Michael McClendon. I see a lot of people tuning in to us tonight. So, yeah, that's us here on the Poetry of Justice Show. And so we're just going to let the music play a little bit. We just got a little bit of a late start today, guys. So we're just getting it all together in here. And we're going to have some good time. So tonight on the Poetry of Justice Show, I have I'm just going to go raw tonight, guys. What do you, Dante? Is it okay for me to just...
I'm with that.
You with it? You with it? You can get jiggy with it? Lori G, Frida Ross. I got Frida Ross in the house. I got our benefactor, Lori Ray Fisher, in the house tonight. How you feeling, beautiful?
I'm feeling good. It's a little warm in here.
We're going to get it together.
I'm feeling okay.
Yes. And then I have to my left, you guys, look, I can still function, right? I don't know if I know, don't you dare.
Don't you say it.
I just don't know if I want to say returning guest, because you were definitely here on the show before, but and you brought such a joy to the show. But I want to just introduce you, because I know you were on the show, but you weren't my showcase. And so tonight you are our very special guest, and you're being showcased here, Christian Branscombe. Did I say it right?
Yes, you did. I was waiting to see if
The last name pronunciation was wrong.
Yeah, it was proper.
Actually, I was really going to talk to you about it ahead of time, but I got a little razzle-dazzle when we got here to the studio.
You had it.
And I didn't do it. I did it right.
Yep, I was right on the money.
Now, Christian, actually, I'm just going to be a little wild with it. I talked to Lori about this, and the last time you were here, I think, you walked in.
It was a splendid day. We showed up on the right day at the right time. The universe, the stars lined up. It was a beautiful day.
Man, Dante, do you remember what show that was when we had Christian?
Power of the Why?
What were the
One of our most
odds?
popular shows yet.
Right? Look at Dante. Like, yeah, we've still been getting some feedback. This is real deal, Frida Ross. I'm like coming home from work a week ago, and I stopped to get gas, and I see one of our guests, one of our listeners. Hey, he's been on the studio before, and he comes up to me and he was like, Jackie. And he's thinking we talked, did a light banter a little bit, and then he goes on to say, he was like, that was great, the show I was at, but the next week, man, that show you guys did on the power of the P word, he was like, I really like that show. So yeah, you came at the right time, I think.
I really did. That was a great night. The spirit was alive, and I was feeling all that.
Did you have any idea what the topic was?
I didn't. I walked right into that blind, and I was all right with that. And afterwards, I was like, you know what? That's how you just you enjoy what the universe puts in your lap, and it was a beautiful thing.
Awesome. Miss Lori Ray Fisher and Miss Frida Ross. How you doing, Miss Boss Lady Ross?
Hey, I'm good. I'm good. Glad to be here.
How was your week, pretty lady?
It was busy.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it was like uber busy.
Like with the training stuff, Frida, or
That
what?
too, also, we had some new forms that the Department of Healthcare Services and those people wanted us to get every single last client that we all have to sign. They switched over some new consent forms. You know, when they say do it now, they want it right now.
Mhm.
So I've been driving all over the state.
All over the state,
Yeah.
not the county,
All over
the
the
state.
Yeah.
And you getting their consent forms and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
but I got it done. Yeah.
That's good.
God is good. Glad to be here.
I know. It's good to have
All
you
the
tonight.
time.
Frida, when you see Christian here in the studio, what are your thoughts go?
Redemption.
Mm.
Yeah, in a real kind of way. You know, it's just for me. It's just, you know, I'm just like, look at God.
Oh my gosh.
Look at God. You know, it's funny. We're not supposed to be in certain places, certain people.
That's true.
We're not supposed to be able to do certain things, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
We're supposed to be stigmatized, stagnant, stuck.
Yeah.
But by the grace of God, we're not, right?
Man, I'm definitely an example of that. I
Christian,
mean,
do you have your phone?
I did, somewhere, yeah.
Okay, I need you to get your phone.
Okay.
I'm going slow with this, I promise. Only because I'm technology challenged.
Oh,
right now.
he's preaching to the choir. over
Right?
here.
But Christian, I am not I'm not the worst thing I've done. I need you to give me the 3. Can you give them to me?
I can give you 2 of them. I remember I'm not the
You
worst thing
got it
I've
on your
done.
phone because you can go to your text
okay.
messages.
See,
Yeah,
that's
because I
why we
got
do
it.
that.
That's why we
Okay.
do that. Because look, I already have this part, and then I put the other piece in the ad. Lord, do you have the ad from today?
The app.
Yes, everyone. You know, I don't know. Oh, Lori's got it from me. I thought you could do it for us, Lori G.
There it
So,
is. Okay, I'm not the worst thing I've
Okay.
done, that I have a lot to give, and people use the
you,
term loosely, but I am living within a miracle, that
So-
I am living within a miracle.
Then with a miracle.
Right.
I like the part when you say, I am not
The worst thing I've ever done.
the worst thing, the worst thing. Thank God for that. Woo, because I would be Lord and Jesus every day. And then, what was the first one again?
That was the first, and then, that I have a lot to give.
Lori G, how are you
Yes.
tonight?
I am well.
How was your week, Queen Lady?
You know, I agree with you, Frida. My week is really busy as well. It seems like time is flying by. It is the end of October. Seems like October just started.
It's almost over, babes. It's almost holidays,
It's almost
Thanksgiving.
holiday.
The whole
All that
year.
good stuff.
It
So,
goes so quickly.
when you see Christian back in the studio, where do you go?
I go to excitement and joy and happiness.
We met on good terms.
And new opportunities.
Yeah.
I don't know all the ins and outs of Christian's story, but I did hear little pieces of it, and it's just exciting, overwhelming, and to know that God has a plan for you.
Absolutely.
Because I think you were chosen. You were chosen for the journey that you took and the journey you're about to take.
Yay. Thank you for coming tonight, Christian. I would like to give a little bit of a shout out to Jason Clark. I think I have to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and then of course to Miss Frida Ross, because Frida brought Jason Clark our way for our redemption projects that we do here on the Poetry of Justice show. We started with Miss April Atkins and then Henry Russell, and then we graduated to Jason Clark, and of course now Christian. So thanks so much. But this is where we're gonna go with Christian. Redemption. This is what Frida's favorite Webster Dictionary tells us all. It tells us that redemption is the action of saving or being saved from error or sin or evil. When you hear that definition, what do you think about that definition?
I think it's very accurate. I tend to spirit of, you know, the work that I'm in and doing, absolutely.
Could you tell us a little bit about that work in the amazing agency which you are?
Yes, I work with Javier Starring at Healing Dialogue and Action, and they work with restorative justice, which is with survivors of violent crime and with offenders of violent crime. And the intention of the work is to invest in both sides equally so that we can mend the fence and create a level playing field for people to function and to find wholeness and well-being. Because we can't heal just one side of society or other side of society and expect it to function properly. So restorative justice, the intention of it is to heal everyone involved in the trauma cycle and hopefully end that cycle. And while we're on that topic, I would like to say that anybody that's listening that's a survivor of violent crime or is in the process of healing, please contact him and know that we are looking for people that want to go into the prisons, that want to have a healing experience for themselves. Because in sharing this type of work, it can be very overwhelming for people to share their personal history like that, to share their pain and to share what it is they've had to go through to heal. And we find that so many people that have healed want to do a lot of this work, but over time it can become overwhelming for them, or it stresses them out, and you know, if they do it too often, you know. So we would love to see more people come in and have that experience, because it's a very cathartic experience for the people that have been through this, you know, to go in and to share their story and to be received by people that may or may not have been the cause of very similar traumas in other people's lives.
Yeah, trauma is such a ugly word. I'm looking in the book here, guys. This is my book. It is called The Poet's Dreams. And this is a collection of poetic art. And I wrote this and published back in 2013. So I go with the spirit, as you know, because you've been here before. And so I'm going to go to page 31. And I'm going to read something, and then we can Frida and Lori, of course, served it 1,000 times. Frida probably 200 times. For life. Tucked away in a tiny cell. Tucked away in a place compared to hell. The dark, desolate, and distant truth. Been locked away since they were youth. With over 10,000 days served on their bed. Life sentences being passed away like bodies are being hid. A concrete slave ship is what it could be called. While walking on the yard can easily get you wrong. So many people had taken this route. Running the streets back in the 80s, they never knew it was a trap. Looking in the stainless steel mirror, watching myself age, wondering when in the hell will I ever get out of this cage. It takes a superhuman mind to roll and not break. But how much more are these individuals supposed to take? CDC blues is all they get to wear. Looking for a visit, and most times nobody's even there. Walking away from the visiting room, your heart out, it will tear. Most of these people just need someone to love, to simply care. Vending machines, playing games, even like banter. Oh my goodness, all of that little stuff like that, all simply matters. Time and dedication, you know how we grow. Never again shall you be with a forgotten soul. Okay,
Wow.
That was it.
that's called for life.
That was it.
And you know, I saw the locking of the eyeball.
Yeah,
That
was on point. Oh, that was on point. Absolutely.
The
Absolutely.
cheeks.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
talk to me about it.
Well, it reminds me of the isolation of prison. You know, as the longer you're in prison, the more isolated you become, and you really have no way to reach out to the community. You have no way to really connect with people in a healthy way. And And what I mean by a healthy way is that a lot of the times the interactions that you have in prison are always in a subservient manner, or there's a authority and your position in it. You never really have like what we have right here, where I can do what I want to do, and you can do what you want to do, and that plays out organically. It's always under authority, and even when it's under authority, that attracts certain types of people to it, because only if you think like, oh, what would make you want to be a security guard? What would make you want to be this person in this environment? So the people that are attracted to these environments are usually very interested in that role of, you know, subservience and oppression. You know, so like you have the oppressor and then you have the person being oppressed. So in that space, you don't really ever have healthy relationships. You always have these very pseudo socializing manner about everything. You never really interact with people. It's always in a context. So if I was even to talk to you in a prison, I would be like under suspicion, like, oh, he's a pervert. He's over there talking to that lady, trying to get at her, you know. And I could just be as innocent as like, hey, I just want to have a conversation with a lady.
Right.
But every single thing that you do in that environment is coached and pushed into a certain context, and you're going to be viewed through a lens. There's no just organic interaction with people. And more importantly, as you change over time, so you might have a connection with your old community or the people that you grew up with, and in time you really outgrow that type of existence. You're not that person, you're not that kid anymore, you're an adult. So where are you gonna find people that are in tune with the new you, or the person that really connects with you in there? And it's, you know, it's a slippery slope, because there's a lot of wonderful women that go in there and dedicate their time to the men in there that are truly amazing people. And a lot of those relationships don't translate out to the street, because the dynamic between that relationship in prison and what they come out to is so vastly different from where they locked in the prison setting, that it shows that even as they come in, you know, their needs and what makes them emotionally available in that environment is still type specific to that environment. So like it's just on that level, prison isolates you from really progressing socially. So for example, I might have done really heavy work in victim offender dialogues. I might have went soul searching and dug up that's why I called the group I made the Bare Bones Society, like to dig up all of those things that you've hidden in the past or in that graveyard that you don't want to look like, and that it's painful. And we can go through all of that type of heavy lifting, but you won't ever see somebody have a real relationship with a woman in prison. Like the biggest thing that catches guys up when they come out is women. You know, they don't know how to, they're still, like when I got arrested, I was 19. So in truth, I'm 19 years old relationship-wise. Now, I'm a man inside now as a grown person, but even now as I've been out, almost a little over 7 weeks, I'm realizing as I interact with people that the things that used to get me going don't get me going. The stuff that I'm attracted to now is much different than I was as a kid, but these are things that I wasn't able to even see in prison, because you're not allowed to have those types of interactions. So it's a big hang-up for people not to have those interactions and to be able to interact with people in that level.
Lori, Ray, what do you think when you hear this much? And then Ms. Robinson. I guess I never thought about that part, about when you went away, or when individuals go away at a particular age, in your case 19, that is the relationship level that you've been dealing with, and that in prison there aren't those opportunities for relationships like you had when you were on the outside.
Right.
I mean, I think we all know relationships happen. Some of them happen even in prison for the first time, right?
Right, but once again, these aren't relationships. So like as a kid, and I find this to be very true for a lot of people that go to prison especially, is that we have a lot of sex, or we have sexual experiences very early in our life, because that's the scene that we're in. But we really don't have any relationships. You don't have a give and a take. It's not a symbiotic relationship. It's not an adult relationship. It's a Jerry Springer relationship. It's a, you know, like it's a get it on and get in trouble type of relationship. So when I speak of relationships, I mean in a healthy context. dynamics to where you're actually connected to the person that you're with. It's symbiotic. There's something that you can build on in the future. Even if it's casual, it's done in a way that has the interest of both people in mind. That to me is an adult relationship. And I don't see a lot of people that don't get to work on that in prison have the opportunity to mature in that way. So they might be very advanced in other areas, but they're stilted in that particular department. So they come out looking very well managed or have a balance about them, but then they have this huge deficit right there, and it's a hang up. It's a hang up for people.
You know, Frida, what I'm thinking about, I'm thinking of Shelley C. with the chat, and I'm thinking of Miss Frida Ross with the term grown folks business. Do you see what I'm saying? We were talking a little bit about the relationship, and as long, even if it's not something long term, right? Even if you get into this,
I mean,
like
there's an
Lori always
adult way to
talks
do
about
it.
those rules of engagement,
Right.
if you will, but healthy, I think, is what is key.
And I think that that's life, right? Like nothing is going, I don't know, life is temporal. So you have to look at things and say, this is right for right now. It might not be right, like we can't see that far down the line. But I think that even when we enter into relationships that may or may not develop long term, I mean, that's how a lot of relationships that have gone long term have been started out in that context. Like, hey, we're enjoying each other's company, so let's do this for a while. And then they find out, man, I really miss you when you're not here, and then it expands, right? So I think that you have to come from a place of understanding and self-awareness first, and then you can extend that to somebody else. So I think that the healing that we do in prison lends to that, but I just think that a lot of the times we haven't had the time to edit that part of ourselves. We haven't had the experiences to go, you know what, I feel differently now. Or, I didn't see it this way when I was a kid, but now I see it this way. So I think that it's an adaptation that a lot of people don't even think about till they get out, and then they get caught up in stuff.
Okay, I have a question for, not a question, I have one more description of what that word redemption means. It says, a second one is the action of regaining or gaining possession of something in exchange for payment, essentially clearing a debt. Do you think that way we would redemption? Clearing of a debt?
In my case, there's to me, it's always mercy for me, and I don't see it in that context. I see it in the context of understanding. So to me, mercy, or the idea of what people call forgiveness, to me, the term forgiveness implies this almost like letting somebody off the hook. And I feel that when somebody has earned mercy, it's from a place of understanding, and on both sides of that fence. And that understanding definitely doesn't let anybody off the hook. The understanding of it really makes it so impactful for the person that has changed that they end up living a life of service, or they have such a deep connection to what it is that they're doing that it's much more powerful than any monetary debt or any social debt. It's something that you can't look past inside of yourself, because you understand the impact that you've had on other people and the impacts that have happened to you.
What about you, Lynn, when you hear about clearing of a debt with regard to redemption?
I can understand what Christian is saying. I don't necessarily see it as clearing a debt, right? I do, what you said resonates with me in terms of the word change, right? So it's to be redeemed or changed from what had happened or you experienced before, right? So when I hear redemption, I think of change. And forgiveness, I don't know if, and that's a question that maybe Frida could chime in on, is that, for me, I don't know if forgiveness means you're off the hook, right? For me, forgiveness is a recognition of what I did was wrong, right?
Okay.
And the other person has to recognize that as well, right? And then when you forgive that person, I think you're saying, okay, I'm not gonna maybe necessarily forget that, but I'm going to allow the space for this to kind of go forward. I'm not gonna get stuck or hung up in this place of anger or sadness or whatever experience you're having that oftentimes doesn't allow people to forgive. At least that's how I kind of feel. What do you think, Rita?
I think, for me, when you talk about redemption, I don't know, it's just such it's a word that, you know, it's so personalized, you know what I'm saying? That's a word that's personal, but for me, it's not so much redemption, although I do agree with Webster's definition of it, but what I feel is that when one gets to a point to where they have taken responsibility for their actions and have made amends for the wrong that has been done, right? Then what you're doing is, and I think therein lies the redemption. When you have made amends for the wrong, or when I've made amends for the wrong that I've done to anyone, then I think that I'm given this redemption piece, because now I have made a choice not to practice that behavior anymore. If that makes sense to you, right?
Absolutely. The idea of redemption in that context is exactly what I built that group that I made in prison with the Fair Bone Society around, which was direct amends. And I felt that when I made the group that you can't make amends for something that you can't feel. So if the traumas that we have in our lives brought us to a point to where we felt that murder or harming other people was going to somehow redeem us, because believe it or not, that is what somebody is doing when they commit this act. They feel it's an act of redemption. And when we see it in that context, we have to know that when we act upon that we cannot really make an amends to somebody until we have conquered that.
There you go.
So that is the true, I don't know what to call that, the ante. When you put it on that table that says, I'm making an amends, and that means I'm going to face the thing that I would have rather died than face, that I would have rather killed other people than face. And in doing that, I actually connect with myself, and I actually connect to you. And in that moment, I've conquered my greatest fear, and I'm offering that act up as a thing saying, I didn't have the courage to face this before I harmed you, but I'm going to do this for the sake of making amends. And in doing so, I am truly connected to you when I say I understand what it is that I have done and how this has impacted you. And in that, there's also something else which lends into what we were talking about a minute ago, which is that forgiveness is, or this understanding that we're talking about, is something that extends to the people that harmed you. And that's when you really understand what you're trying to do with the person that you're extending it to. Because if I look at and I go, okay, well, my mother traumatized me, and for a long time you go, okay, this is the trauma that came from there, and you leave it in that context. But then when you start really understanding your trauma and how you passed it on and how these things went on, you go back and you go, wow, well, my mom didn't just come up with this out of the blue. Where did this come from? And then you look at her alcoholic mother, and you look at the verbal abuse she was given, and you look at her insecurities and the forced abortion she was to have, and then all of a sudden you start understanding how it was that she could neglect her child and how she could do these things. And somehow this understanding changes your heart. It changes how you receive even the trauma that you receive. And you look at yourself and I go, I understand, and I can let go of that resentment. And in going forward, as you try to extend to the people that you've harmed, and from that same exact cycle, that it was given to her, she gave it to me, I processed it, and I gave it back out. It's that same cycle, and as you look at it, you're humbled by it, because you know what the other person's going to have to do to receive it. Because they're going to have to do the work, because you can't take it back. You can give it, but you can't take it back. It's a social disease. So you can pass it on, but you can't revoke it. You can't pull it back. So in doing that whole process is very humbling, and that understanding is something that will deeply impact you for the rest of your life when you've done the work. And I believe that that's what we're talking about.
And I think that in that process, that's wherein lies the redemption. I think that we have a very false sense of what redemption really means.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Or it could mean different things to different people, right? You know, But for me, I think that in doing the work and just doing the things that I needed to do in order to make the changes that I needed to make, in order for me to forgive and for others to forgive me, right?
Right.
Then I am affording myself redemption. The world can give me or afford me many different things when and if they want to. But when I do it myself, when I feel this myself, you know what I mean? Then that's when it really means something more. It's more tangible.
And you're conquering to me, if we don't want to face some aching insecurity or some feeling of inadequacy or something deeply shameful within us, and this is usually what violence or harm that we extend to other people comes from. If we avoid that and we redeem ourselves through the very thing that harmed us. So if I as a kid get punched and put on the ground and I go, okay, in this moment I learned that I'm weak, they are strong. And if I want to not feel this way, I need to be that way. And I adopt that shame ethic, okay? Then from there, I am going to keep progressing in an addiction cycle, because really this is an addiction to violence or to harming others, because it's never going to work. It's going to be temporary, and you're going to have to go harder and harder and harder to get that temporary salve that tells you I'm not the person on the ground. But the greatest courage you will ever have is to accept that you are on the ground.
Yes.
And to know that that isn't who you are today. And to face that greatest fear that you have, which is to think that you're not going to make it through that. And to know that now you have the responsibility of all of those actions that followed that those are your actions. And that you are responsible for those things, and that you have to take ownership of that. So I think that when people have the courage when you really understand how shame functions within us as a psychological function, you realize that that's really the only thing that you can do that says that the cycle is broken,
Yes.
that it is over. Now it is no
Absolutely.
longer going to exist within your life, and that you can give it to other people because you had the courage to face your greatest fear. And so, just to briefly cover what that psychological step is without getting too crazy with it, is that shame is actually a healthy thing when it's short term. It's meant to cause you to act, and it's something that comes from without. So if I'm wetting the bed and you look at me, I feel ashamed, but this is going to cause me to action, so I'm not going to wet the bed anymore. So now this is a healthy thing. At the end of that, I feel strong. I didn't wet the bed no more. Right. And so once you get from there, then you're strong enough to connect to the people around you and to love them. This is a healthy cycle, and at every distinctive level of psychological development, this is part of that process, okay? So what happens in a shame cycle is that, say that I'm wetting the bed, and I don't overcome. Now I feel the shame, but now I move on in life, and I actually stop wetting the bed. I feel ashamed. I've been belittled by somebody, or I feel small, and I never got that moment to where I felt like I overcame that. So now that's a seed inside of my chest. And so say maybe in that moment, the parent were to have belittled me. Anytime I feel that insecurity, I would belittle someone else.
Yes.
And I would keep pushing it out because I would think that this is good, that is the strength of the situation and this is the weakness. So I would cause this cycle to keep getting worse and worse and worse until I had the courage that I needed initially to overcome that feeling, to go, I'm gonna overcome this. So that act of going back to that moment and showing that you have the strength and presenting it in front of others, that is the way shame works, is that it actually only goes away when you actually have the courage to present it in front of other people.
You put it out there and you take the power
Away from you.
out
of it.
of it.
And you're not gonna
Yes.
get everybody on your team, but the people that you do get on your team, you're actually connected. And more importantly, in that moment, you go, I had the strength to own my shit. That's what's up. Like now I'm owning it.
Right.
And that is the only way to conquer it, and it is the most courageous thing you will do. And I've done it in group settings to where we didn't even go to it. I was just like, okay, and I pretend like we're gonna go to it. So I'm like, all right, I want you to think about the worst thing you've ever done, something you never told anybody. All right, and then I share something that I've done, and then I look around like, all right, we're about to share it, and then you just see people like sweating, and oh my God, and I go, we're not gonna share it, and you just see them deflate, like, oh, thank God.
Hallelujah.
But that's the power that it has in your life. That is the power that it has inside of your chest, that every day that's how much you fear that coming to life. Think of how powerful that is, that it is so overwhelming inside of you that you are terrified at just the thought of it.
Sick of you.
So anytime something enters your life in that context, that is what's governing your life until you have the courage to face it.
Sick is our secrets.
No, it's the truth.
Right.
It's the truth.
And it's so redeeming. There is redemption.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. That is what we're
Right?
talking
That's
about.
we give it to ourselves, I believe.
And you can
Yeah.
give it, and so what happens when you get healed is that you no longer shame others.
You
And
will
that
not.
and that is our strength, is that I can hear you say anything, and I mean anything. And of course, I'm, having been on the opposite side of the spectrum, like, there's no way I could look at any human being and they could tell me the worst thing that they think they've ever done, and I'm still gonna love them. I'm still gonna care about them. I'm still gonna be like, you know what? I'm looking at the person today that's sitting in front of me, not the person that committed this act. And that this act came from trauma. This act isn't you.
Yeah.
And that goes back to that thing that we were talking about, that I am not the worst thing I have ever done. I am the person that you're looking at today. And anytime you're dealing with somebody and really interacting with them, and you have the power to give that to them as a healing gesture. Because the biggest thing with shame is that it says this in your head: you could be as kind to me as can be, you could be as generous, you could offer me scholarships, you can throw whatever you want at me, but if I can't receive it, if something in me says, if you really knew me, you would not love me, you would not accept me, I am not receiving what you're giving me, and it is my decision. And there's nothing you can convince me inside of myself if I go, no, I'm terrified for you to know this, and if you know this, you wouldn't love me, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing right now. It actually makes me resent you, because you're the one that's gonna turn on me. You're the one that's gonna, like that's the way they feel. So they do horrible things to other people under that context. Oftentimes are the very people that are being most generous.
And that cycle is so
Vicious.
So
It's ugly.
so vicious and very hard to conquer.
Great God.
Yeah.
Is that a part of the hurt people?
Hurt people.
That's what's up.
Absolutely.
And next week, everyone we have an audience included. Back in the hospital, I was with her for Hurt People Highway.
Mm.
We had an opportunity
Yeah.
to meet.
She's awesome, yeah.
If you want to stop on by, we're there right now. What do you think when you hear the word criminal?
Well, I think of a lot of things.
Okay, let's
I think
go.
of a lot of things. I mean, it's
Let's just give me two. Bring two.
I think somebody that's outcast from society.
Okay, we got Tupac going down.
Yeah, a little outcast. And I think of judgment. I think of judgment.
Lori, criminal. Talk to me.
I think of isolation. And then I also think misunderstanding of a label. I think there's definitions of criminals that people place on people that are crazy. That doesn't define who they are. So I think of a label, incorrect displacement of a label.
Lori, I'm sorry, a label? You don't like the labeling?
No, I don't like the label.
Okay.
I don't like the label.
Ms. Ross, please.
Criminal. When I think of the word criminal, I think of trauma. I think of someone that has been demeaned, has been belittled. When I think of criminal, I think of the underserved. Yeah. all the right labels that should be used. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Really?
I do.
What do I think of the word criminal?
Michael Myers is coming again.
I feel like criminal is, someone said trauma. I think there's definitely an attachment to that. Because I don't think that people are inherently bad people. I think there's something that happens that makes you said it too, you said you feel like you're redeeming yourself when you do a crime. Let's say you kill somebody, you feel like you're acting on that redemption. And there was someone in the station the other week that was talking about how something happened to him, but they were like, oh, I'm gonna kill him. But that's exactly it, because you're feeling that how you were wronged, you're gonna be redeeming yourself for doing that act. So I think, yeah, it's someone who is attacked, there's trauma, and it has overcome and made them commit a crime. But I don't think that people are here.
I'm gonna go deeper. I got this written down. We'll come back to this, but bad seed. The bad seed. I can pull it up right now. We can start watching it, guys. But I love this. But no, seriously. Or we could even go freedom with Lori. Nature versus nurture. I believe that there could possibly be bad seeds.
Okay.
Lori? But what do we use the word bad? And that's a question I have on this list. What do you think when you, okay, I'll tell you that other one. But anyway, okay, what do you think when someone tells you, now I don't know, maybe because just people told me this. What do you think when someone tells you that you're bad? I ain't never heard that.
Who?
Just me. I was the only one.
What do we think?
I don't know.
I thought there was something
I'm
more.
the bad seed. Yeah, I know. I'm just, that's my man. Straight real. That's no, really.
Yeah.
Lord, you didn't get that memo, did you?
What, the bad news?
No. What do you think when people tell you you was bad? You know you was bad. Okay, I'm gonna give you this analogy. When Mommy used to tell us, remember Mommy would give her stories and she would talk about the Rays.
Right.
And she would say that they would tell it down in Oklahoma, them Rays is some bad, you know what. So if I'm a Ray and I sit here, you telling people that that's the MO of a Ray is being bad, let's just bust it down to the white meat. What am I? I'm bad. Or am I not bad? Am I a bad seed?
Well, I think socialization, nurture, I think plays a huge, huge part in that. Even in that example, right? Because I would hear that I was bad and that there were all these rules and mechanisms that were put in place so that you wouldn't become bad because you were born into badness, right? And I don't know. I think that I don't think that behavior is biologically assigned through your DNA.
So you don't think that
I
by
think
innate?
it's socialized, it's based on, you know what I'm saying? And maybe by putting all these mechanisms in place and isolating and protect, as my brother-in-law would say, right? Isolating and protecting these children kept them from not being bad. Because this other pot over here, there was a lot of stuff going on, and they didn't have maybe rules, regulations, supervision, whatever. But I don't think you're like just innately.
Tony Tone says the definition. Tony Tone. Hold on. Let me get it together. And then propaganda to manipulate society to view certain individuals. So when you think of crime, you have a perception of who a criminal is. Thank you, Tone. I'm gonna have to just click it for you one more time. I'm gonna just.
I think that's very true. Don't you think,
Okay.
Christian? Do you think that's true that media creates idea, a persona of what a criminal is?
Definitely, there's definitely a persona attached to criminality and the criminal, but the thing is that it's romanticized. So you get, as for me as a kid, those
I know, I think about Mike Easy.
and they're the rebels on the side running everything.
Hells
We're
Angels,
doing-
ooh.
Yeah, we're
The
doing this.
Thunderbirds in Greece.
Yeah, you know,
I
it's like,
know.
and as a kid, at least for me, all I saw was my heroes. I didn't see something that was the antithesis of what I should have been doing. I saw like a way out or a way to redeem myself. Like these people were my heroes, and I was attracted to all of those things. And I see that a lot of people, even that aren't as damaged as I was, are drawn to those things. But the truth is that is a lie. You know, you can't go around shooting things in society, burning rubber through the city, and doing all sorts of crazy, jumping off cliffs, and not go to jail for life, because that's what's going to happen.
Because your environment, right,
Yeah.
supported that, right? It supported, and as you said, maybe your heroes in that environment were the people who were drag racing or robbing, stealing, whatever that was, right? Opposed to maybe an environment where that wasn't the norm,
Well,
that wasn't idolized.
for me, I had a dad that was pretty passive. He was a good-natured guy, farm guy from, you know, Portuguese guy from a farm town. You know, he was not an aggressive person. My mother was not there, and when she was there, she wasn't that type of protector, you know. So I think that I didn't draw from my direct environment the aggression that I developed. I nurtured it within myself because I needed it, because no one was there protecting me. So I idolized things like Michael Myers and Friday the 13th, because in the movies they had been harmed, and what were they doing? They were exacting revenge. They were redeeming like for what had happened. They were paying them back. They were getting their due. You know, they were getting what they were supposed to get.
But that's a part of your socialization.
That's what I'm saying, but that's me choosing it once again. So like I was looking into.
But is it really choosing, or is it a coping mechanism?
It-
Because there's a void here, and you found a way to move through that with the Michael Myers and the Friday the 13th,
It's
or
both.
whatever that is.
It's both. And
Yeah.
and so because I didn't have a role model, I chose my role models. And I chose the ones that felt like the baddest ones on there. And when you talk about a bad seed, that implies that from the very beginning that it's no good. And I think that a lot of trauma that really lends into really super negative behavior later in life happens so early that connotation goes with it, because when they see a 5-year-old and they go, oh, this guy's a bad seed. You're right. From that point, I had already been
But that
damaged
boy is
from,
too-
you know.
Yeah, he was a bad
He was
seed.
a bad seed. He was 2 years old. I knew he was going to finish.
You could
And-
just scream in front
And
of
I
him.
hate when people say that.
Lordy.
Because it is like, death and life is in the power of the tongue.
Amen.
And your words have value. Like, your words have so much value. So like, my sister, for example, her god sister will always say to the baby, oh, she's just a bad baby. Babies too. Baby don't know anything yet. But you're consistently saying it's a bad kid, it's a bad kid, it's a bad kid. What is that going to give them? You know what I mean? If they're 2 years old and they're already making mistakes, or just doing something, not listening to you, how are you going to get them out of that? Because they're not going to stay two forever. And if you keep saying bad kid, bad kid, bad kid, they're going to do bad things. But I don't think you should say to kids it's a bad kid, because that just socializes them. Like
Well,
you're
that's
saying.
part of the socialization. And I never called, he was not my child.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
the lady used to braid my hair. And I could, based on his socialization, and this is the tricky part, based on his own personality. He was a very aggressive little person. He was a very intelligent little person.
Calculated.
And he was a very calculated little
Knew what he was
person. And so, but what I'm saying is he had all of those qualities, but there was no one in that, in that environment, no one in the jungle that I met that was in his little world that was going to help him take those innate skills. I do believe that we're born with innate skills, right? Things that we're good at. But for him to take those innate skills and cultivate them into a constructive pathway.
See, so they have certain biological things that do affect us. So like say you're in the womb and the mother's very stressed and the stress hormones are going through there now. This actually changes your genetic structure
It
to some
does,
degree,
yes.
because we all have latent genes in us that come from different, evolutionary whatever, but the idea is that in an environmental way, that's also part of the environmental stimulus. If they grow up in a very stressed out environment, those stress hormones go through the body and the heart rate is going up. They hear tones and vibrations that are coming through. So, and then you enter drugs and alcohol into these things, and I've seen, my own brother, hit his, the lady he ended up having a kid with in the stomach while she had a baby. I mean, so babies feel and actually receive pain and trauma inside the womb. And then so, but once again, this is environmental. Even though it's genetic, it's also environmental because it's coming in through our environment. So it
So
ends
does
up,
that make it back to nurture?
well,
You know, it's environment?
I believe that the 99% of things are definitely because of the environment and the way that we're bringing it into, you know, like, and that what the nurturing aspect of it, you know, like what we're bringing to it is what affects our lives and others.
Yeah.
What do you think about bad seed? Does it exist?
Personally, no. I think for me, the term bad itself is so polarizing that it can't be true to life. You know, everything that is true to me is fluid, is flexible, is true to a variety of contexts. So anytime I say good, bad, plus, minus, we've lost the middle range. And so therefore, that makes it impossible for it to be true to life for me, is that it has to, there's so much more in life than just yes and no.
I think that you were talking about the small child. I believe that you are what you eat, right, from your head down to your feet. And oftentimes you hear that, or you hear people talk about, oh, that baby is bad, that baby gonna be a murderer, that baby gonna end up in prison. Well, you know what? You're probably right. Because what are you feeding that child? And I can guarantee you that when you find a child that's that young and they're acting out in aggression and they're behaving badly and stuff like that, they're witnessing some things, they're experiencing some things, there's something that's going on. You know what I mean? Oh, good. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Hello, your name? You're on the air. Frida Ross.
I love him.
Hey, Ronnie Ross. What's up, Ronnie Ross?
What's
Good.
up?
How are you?
Oh.
Well, I am so glad. The Freddy Krueger in the house. Nightmare on La Brea Street. Say it ain't so. Roddy Rock. What do you think about The Bad Seed? Did you ever see that film? The Bad Seed? Now, do you? You finna take Rhoda? He wouldn't give me the medal, so I just kept hitting him. What do you think there are bad seeds in people, Rod, or is it just socialization, environment, and things of the such? What's your opinion? Okay. No voodoo tonight, Rod. We good on the voodoo.
I would agree with Rod to a certain degree, but I think that we, before we are introduced to the environment, we are home.
Definitely.
We're being nurtured.
Right. We're being even your home environment.
That's what I'm.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking
Case
about.
in point.
Yeah, and then when we get all of that, whatever we have gotten from the home environment, and then we go out into this world with this wall of defense, with this body full of fear and angst, right? I used to tell people all the time, you know, I fought all the time in school. And wasn't nobody gonna do nothing to me. They wasn't gonna do nothing to me. They couldn't do nothing with me.
No.
That's because when I was fighting you, I was fighting the world. You were fighting me. I was fighting the world though, you know? So yeah, we take that into the environment. We take that out there, and then it just there comes some more.
Right.
You know what I mean? There comes some more. All these negative experiences. So hell yeah, the child was bad. Yeah. She was a bad girl.
Ah. Yay.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
Rod. Oh my God. You are. Check your red cedar meter. See what's going on with you.
Right. I love you, Rod.
We
love you, Rod.
Awesome.
All right, talk to you soon, Rod. Thank you. Miss Ross, Lori Ray, Christian,
Yeah.
how you doing?
Doing good, doing
Yeah.
good.
Christian, just one more time while we segue back in from Rod's call, could you let individuals know if they wanted to look some healing and restoration, what they can do?
Yeah, please, if you're interested in restorative justice or the idea that both sides of the fence need to heal so that our communities become whole, that prisoners are not separate from your community even when they're separated from it, and you want to, and you're a survivor of a violent crime, and either you want help or you would like to speak to people about your healing journey, healing dialogue and action with Javier Starring would really appreciate your time and your energy as we try to promote this for other people that haven't healed yet or don't know that they can heal, and that, you know, seeing is believing. A lot of the times when we go into places and talk to people that have been traumatized by violent crime, they don't really believe that they can heal. And if you really think about anything that you haven't seen in somebody else, or you might have seen a modicum of it, you really don't understand that you can be whole, you can be healed, you can have a community, you can love again, you can be free of that trauma. So for somebody that's willing to share that with the community that really needs it, we would love to have you contact Javier Starring at Healing Dialogue and Action, and it's a great organization that promotes healing for everyone.
Awesome.
And that healing and all of that, you can really, people oftentimes think I've done so much, I've said so much, I would never be able to have a good life. No, honey, life is better.
It is, it is.
Life is better.
Life is better.
Yeah, I think that you appreciate it a whole lot more when you've overcome adversity and trauma and all of that stuff. You know what I mean? If you can bend that corner and really get into the healing process,
Yeah, because
life is awesome.
when you say healing, what you're really saying is disconnected.
Yep.
And
That's right.
as social beings, as people that need other people in our lives, and a lot of people don't want to believe that, especially when you've been traumatized. You don't want to believe that you need other people, or that that's even important to you, because other people hurt us, so we don't want to accept that as a need. But in truth, we are social creatures, and we are designed to not only be connected to one another, but to God, to the universe, to everything that's sacred. And if we don't have the ability to overcome this trauma, we isolate ourselves more and more and more. And really, that is, like, not to get biblical or anything, but like the idea of that, when they say, anytime they address sin or they talk about what it is that would be considered that, it's always a separation from God. And God is oneness, right? God is everything and in all things. So anytime you separate yourself from something, what is Satan? The divider, right? It's the idea that division, he's the one that created division. So when you ate the apple, what did? Opposites. You were aware of your opposites. So when we become polarized, or we separate ourselves from other people, we're committing a sin upon ourselves, because we're not allowed to be whole. We're not allowed to connect to the things that really matter to us or that are sacred. And we will not have peace or well-being in our lives or extend it to other people if we cannot find that within ourselves.
That's right.
What are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling very, very calm.
Calm.
She has a calming presence.
Man.
You feel that?
Absolutely.
She's very, very calm.
Absolutely.
Very enlightened, very informed.
So do you feel differently about the bears? Is that just a Hollywood thing?
I still think it's
What about the word criminal? You feeling differently about that now?
is why I'm sitting here thinking about how many times have I used the word criminal, just like for,
Like,
do you see those little criminals down there?
I say that all. Look, I said it too.
I
when
do.
I was a criminal.
I do say that.
Shit.
So it's like, you know, being honest here, put it on the table.
I
have
these
to grow
criminals. I never
in my
these criminals.
vernacular here.
Yeah.
I don't want to pull up to my house and there's no criminals. Just like,
Yeah.
I say that. Oh, I don't.
That's not. Guys, it's that amazing time of the show where we're gonna take our break because Whitley is going to punch me in the kneecap if I don't. She's looking at me like, what you about to say, Jackie?
Oh, it's still going.
But anyway, guys, we're gonna get ready for our Facebook viewers. Don't go away. We're just gonna take a little bit of a musical interlude break, and we're gonna maybe some big payback, maybe some James Brown, some Give Us Flowing, and Mr. Quick. Whatever we're gonna do, we're gonna have some fun. It's Dante, Jackie Ray, fun time, and we're just gonna take a little bit of break, and we'll be back here on the Poetry of Justice show with Jackie Ray Phillips on Max Radio.